What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello and welcome. So Unearthly Cosmetics recently expanded and remastered their Not Normal palette, which for me has been a top favorite from the brand for a very long time. So of course I had to get the new one, and I thought it would be fun to sit down, create a couple of looks, do some side-by-side comparisons, and let you know if I think the new version is well worth your hard-earned money if you have the original. Now I will have this palette linked and listed down below in the description box, as well as everything else that I use in today's video. So per usual, if you're ever curious about anything I use in any of my videos here on my channel, always check the description box. I squeeze as much information as I possibly can into that tiny little space. But let's go ahead and jump into the details on this palette, and then we'll do our side-by-side comparisons and create our couple of looks. Alright, y'all, so this is what our new version of the Not Normal palette looks like. It does have the same cover art on here, it's just a little bit bigger because this is going to be an 18 pan palette and the original palette was a 12 pan color story. Now I do want to note that the pans in this palette are magnetic, so you can pop them out, rearrange them, or you can mix and match with other Unearthly palettes if you have them and you want to create your own color story. But this palette does retail for $62, and I believe the original palette retailed for somewhere around $36. I could be wrong, correct me if I am. So obviously there's going to be a price increase, but this is their new and improved formula, so you're going to have that creamier, more pigmented matte formula that they came out with, and their shimmers are going to be a little bit more shifty, sparkly, and shimmery on the eye as well. Now personally, I never had an issue with the original Unearthly formula. I really liked it and I still do. Some of my favorite palettes from the brand have the original formula, but I will say that their new formula is really nice as well. So if you're looking at this thinking that you just want to upgrade for the formula, that may not be the best reason, but again, everybody has their own preference. We are going to do side-by-side swatches in just a minute, but I want to show you what the original one looks like in case you don't have it. So here is a side-by-side of the two palettes. So you can see the original one is just a little bit smaller. Again, it is a 12 pan palette. So let's go ahead and open them up and look at these two color stories side by side. Alright, so here you have it. So you can see that we definitely have all the original shades from this palette moved over into this one, just new and improved formula, but then we also have some new shades as well. Now personally, I think both of them are beautiful. I do think the shimmers in here are a little bit more impactful than the ones that you're going to get in here. We've got some duochromes, multichromes, and things like that, but let's go ahead and get into the swatches. So I'm going to swatch them out with the correlating shades next to one another, and then we'll do the new shades underneath those so we can see what the expansion portion looks like. Alright, y'all, so we switched to an overhead view. We have both of our palettes sitting here in front of us. So this is going to be the original and this is going to be the newer expanded version. And opening them up and looking at the color stories a little bit closer, you can see that there's kind of an even expansion when it comes to the shimmers and the mattes. It looks like we've got 3 new matte shades and 3 new shimmer shades. So let's go ahead and swatch these out side by side and see how the mattes are going to compare to the originals and see what the shimmers look like compared to the originals as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these just like this, so they're still in frame, but I can put my arm right here. So when I swatch this out, I'm gonna go in order of this palette over here. So I'm just gonna go top to bottom, left to right, and I'm gonna swatch the correlating shade from this palette over here. And then once I've swatched out this whole palette, I'll throw in the new shades underneath so we can see exactly what the expansion is gonna look like. So the first shade that we have is going to be this one up here, and this is the shade Day Job. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch this one out right here. Look at how beautiful, smooth, and pigmented that is. Ugh, I love this so much. Okay, let's go into the shade Day Job from over here. I'm going to do my best to swatch this out side by side and not mix them up. Alright, so that is what the new shade looks like, and very, very similar. I think the older one is just a little bit darker and maybe a little bit more neutral. It looks like the newer one has just the tiniest bit more warmth to it, but pretty close on, so not a whole lot of difference there. Not enough to really make a big difference either way. All right, so the next shade that we're gonna have is going to be our first shimmer shade, and it's going to be the shade Topaz. This is one of my favorites in this palette. I just love that really pretty chartreusey green shimmer shade. It looks beautiful on the inner corner or even all over the lid, but we know I love a good chartreuse on the inner corner. So that is what the original Topaz shade looks like. Now let's swatch out the new one, because this one looks like it's got a good shift to it, and I do love a good shifty shade, but I don't always need a good shifty shade. So that's what those two shades look like on my finger side by side, but let's go ahead and swatch it out right here on my wrist. So definitely a lot more pigmented as far as the base goes, and it definitely has that little bit of a gold shift to it. Very pretty. It is not a carbon copy of the original with just amped up sparkle to it. So if you like this shade, but you like this shade as well, then maybe you would benefit from upgrading to the new one and having both of them in your collection. But overall, they are both very beautiful shades, and I'm sure I have this one other places in my collection as well. All right, so our next shade is going to be Gemini, which is this one right here. It's this really pretty iridescent duochrome shade, and this one is gorgeous as well. It has almost a translucent base to it, so it's a really pretty topper inner corner, just a little something to kind of layer on top and give that extra sparkle. And then here is our new Gemini shade right here, and this one looks like it's gonna have a little bit more of that green reflect to it and a little bit deeper of a base as well. So it's not going to be quite as iridescent and toppery as the original one, but that is absolutely gorgeous. Look at that reflection, look at that flip. So beautiful. I will admit that Unearthly's new shimmers are incredibly beautiful, and they're just out of this world. All right, so moving on, we have our purple shade, which is called Sultry. So this is the original one right here. Very beautiful. Oh, I love that purple shade. It's so pretty. And then this is going to be our new Sultry shade. So very similar. It looks like the newer one might be a little bit deeper. It's not quite as light as the original, but still very close. Not enough to warrant an upgrade if you're just looking at the newer mattes in this palette. All right, first shade, second row, we have the shade Basic, and that's exactly what it is. I don't even know if it's going to show up on my skin because it's pretty much the same color as my skin, but very pretty, very smooth. This is a great blending out shade. It's really good to kind of ground your look and kind of start out your look if you're going to do something super smoky. So let's go ahead and swatch our new Basic shade right next to that one. And I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but it looks like the newer one has a little bit more pink to it, and the original one has a little bit more neutrality to it. So just like we saw with the brown shade up here, these have a little bit more of that pinky undertone, and these have a little bit more of that neutral undertone. I will throw in some up close swatches later on as well, so you can get a better view, kind of zoom in and things like that, but this is what we are looking like so far. Next up, we have the shade Emerald, this really pretty emerald green shade that I almost swatched on top of the shade Basic because I didn't see it on my arm because it blends in that well, but that is the original emerald shade, and then let's swatch the new emerald shade right next to it. Now those two are very close. I don't really see much of a difference at all. I apologize if my swatches aren't perfect. They don't always swatch out the best, but performance-wise, their mattes are beautiful, but pretty much the same shade. This one may be a little bit more pigmented than the original, but keep in mind this palette is a little bit on the older side. It's not nearly as new as this one, but it still packs a punch for being a little bit older. All right, so next up we have one of my favorite shades in the palette, which is called Exercise. It's this really pretty mustard yellow shade. Oh, look at how bright and vibrant that is. Again, beautiful on the inner corner. But let's go ahead and swatch out the new one. So that is our new Exercise shade. And that one looks like it's going to be a little bit more grungy than the original one. The original one has a little bit more of like a pop and a brightness to it. And this one looks like it has a little bit more of a muted undertone, but still super close, not enough to make a big difference. All right, so our next shimmer is going to be Taupe, and it's this one right here, which is like this really pretty, almost silvery taupey shade. Perfect shade name for it actually, but That is what the original taupe looks like, and then this is going to be our new taupe shade right here. So this one looks like it definitely has a deeper base to it. It's got a little bit more shimmer. It also has a little bit more of like a gold green flip to it as well, and the camera's picking up a little bit more purple than this one over here as well. So very unique, really pretty. I think I like this one better than the original one. So far the shimmers are definitely outweighing the original ones. While these are still beautiful, the new ones are just stunning. Last row, so the first shade that we have is going to be Smoke. It's this really pretty deep brown shade. I love this one for deepening up the outer corner, being a liner, anything like that. And then let's swatch our new Smoke shade right here. All right, so that is our new shade, and I don't really see a difference in those. Those are pretty much spot on the same shade. Up next, we have the shade Emotions. It's this really pretty kind of lavender purple shimmer shade. Very beautiful, very reflective. And then this is going to be our new Emotions shade. So let me pick up a little bit of that. Swatch it right here, and oh my gosh, that looks just like an amped up version of this one right here. So it looks like it's got the same base, the same tonality to it, but this one just has more shimmer, sparkle, and reflect to it. Absolutely stunning. Those two would actually look beautiful paired together. Next, we have the shade Sage, which is a really pretty sage green, just as the name suggests. So that is what our original one looks like, and then let's get a good swatch of the new one side by side. This is so awkward to do it like this, I apologize, but that is what our new Sage shade looks like. So again, very similar. I don't really see a difference either. Again, the newer ones may be a little bit more pigmented than the original ones, but as far as the actual shade goes, I don't see a difference, but we have one more shade to do. Our last and final shade from the original palette is going to be Grunge, which is this really pretty mauvey purple shade. I love this one as well. It is so incredibly beautiful. And then let's do a swatch of our new version of Grunge as well. I'm gonna put that one right there. Yeah, pretty much the same. Again, maybe a little bit more pigmented. Actually, I think this one might have a little bit more purple to it than this one does right here. This one has just a little bit more like dustiness to it. I hope that makes sense. But that is going to be your side-by-side comparison of the two palettes right there. So as far as the original shades go versus the new shades, the mattes are pretty much spot on. Your differences are really going to come down to the upgrade of your shimmers, and I do think the new shimmers are absolutely beautiful. I think this one right here, the taupe shade, is my favorite new one out of all of them. It's just so unique, and it has the most beautiful like green to purple flip to it. Absolutely stunning. But I'm gonna go ahead and kind of move this palette out of the way, and we're gonna swatch out the new shades on my other arm so we can do a side by side and you can see what the actual expansion is. All right, so our first new shade that we have is going to be this really pretty matte brown shade, and this one is called Curious. Ooh, that is really pretty. That's almost like a poopy brown shade. I know that's like a disgusting descriptor for an eyeshadow, but I just think that's absolutely beautiful. I really like that shade. All right, so up next we have the shade Impulsive, and this is going to be a really pretty like purple multi-chrome shade, and it looks like it has a little bit of like a holographic sparkle to it. So we're gonna go ahead and swatch that one out right there. That is beautiful. It looks like it has a blue base to it. I love the flip and the sparkle on that one. That one would look gorgeous all over the lid if you did like one of those deeper shades in the crease and just put that all over. Stunning. Next we have the shade Charisma, and this is going to be another shimmer shade. This looks like it's going to be just a really pretty emerald green shimmer. I don't think it has a flip or anything like that to it, but absolutely beautiful. Look at that reflect and that shimmer that that shade has. All right, so we have another new matte shade, and this one is going to be Believer, and this is going to be like a really pretty forest green shade. So I'm just going to go ahead and swatch that one out right there. That's really pretty. I like the addition of that shade. I always felt like this emerald green shade right here was a little out of place for the palette. It does work, but I feel like this one works just a little bit better with the rest of the tones in the palette. All right, so our last new shimmer shade is going to be this one right here, which is called Mood Swing. And this one is absolutely beautiful. Again, it has so many sparkles in it. And let's see what this one looks like when it swatches out. Okay, this is going to be like that brown purple shade, a very typical and common multi-chrome, but it's still absolutely beautiful. And I think this one goes really well with the palette as well. And our last new shade for this palette is going to be Soft Spot. And it's going to be this really pretty kind of dusty lilac-y shade. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch that one out right there. Absolutely gorgeous. I really like the addition of that shade as well. So those are going to be your 6 new shades in this palette. So let's go ahead and move this one out of the way, and I can give you a side by side. So once again, over here on this arm, you have the, let me get me fully in frame. You have the original Not Normal palette right here on my arm, and then you have the remastered version over here, and then this is going to be your expansion. So I do think it's a really good expansion, but I don't necessarily think just based off of the swatches that if you have the original, you really need to upgrade to the new one, unless you don't have some of these shades in your collection and you really want to add them in, or maybe you just want to upgrade the formula and kind of get rid of an older palette and bring in something new. But that is going to be our side-by-side comparison. So let's go ahead and jump into our 2 looks with the new Unearthly Cosmetics Not Normal palette. Alright y'all, so my eyes are primed with my MAC paint pot in the shade Painterly. Let's go ahead and start creating our 2 looks with this palette. So I think for the first look, I want to play with like these more purple and mauvey shades over here. I'm really interested in this new one called Soft Spot, and I really want to put the shade Taupe all over my lid. So with that being said, I'm going to start with the shade Soft Spot right here. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up with my BK Beauty 201 brush, and I'm going to start by kind of fluffing this into my crease. I am going to go in a little bit light-handed because Unearthly has a very pigmented formula, so you don't need to go in super heavy-handed. You don't need a whole lot of product, and personally I like to go in lighter-handed and build up if I need to. It's much easier to build up the pigmentation than to go back and try and take away pigmentation because it got away from you. But that is such a pretty dusty lilac shade. It's going on absolutely beautifully. I am getting some kick up in the pan, but I'm not getting any patching, skipping, fallout, anything like that. It's just laying down really, really nicely. Alright, so with that same brush, I'm going to go into the shade right here, which is called Grunge, and I'm going to build up my outer corner just a little bit. So again, same brush, pick up a little bit of product, and I'm going to start by pressing it out here and kind of building up into the crease, and then once I get to the outer portion of my lid, I'm gonna go ahead and start swiping and blending and really just kind of blowing it out and fluffing it out here, giving me sort of like a wing shape. I'm also going to take that shade down onto the outer portion of my lower lash line as well. So I'm not going to bring it super far over. I'm going to bring it about to where I stopped on my lid, just so we have a nice even flow from the top to the bottom. Alright, so before I deepen up my outer corner, I want to go into this shade right here, which is called Basic, and I'm just going to pick that up with my Refer 13 brush, and I'm very lightly going to kind of go right along the edge of those purple shades that I put down, just kind of blending them into my skin tone a little bit better, softening them, and making sure that we have less of a harsh line and more of a seamless blend out here, just because this is such a darker shade and I am so fair skinned. So if you're a little bit darker than me, you can probably skip this, but if you're fair, this is a really good tip, and I always love it when a palette has this sort of shade in it for that reason. But you can also go in and use like your setting powder or a pressed powder or just a kind of bone colored shade from any other palette. All right, so now we can deepen up the outer corner, and to do that, I'm gonna go into this deep brown shade down here, which is called Smoke. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up with my Morphe M506 brush, and I am just going to very lightly tap this right here in the very outer portion of my lid, just kind of tapping it, and then once I have it where I want it, I can sort of blend it in. And if I need to go back with that shade Grunge and kind of reiterate it a little bit, I absolutely can, but I like to go in very light-handed when I'm dealing with blacks or really dark browns or anything like that, just because they can get away from you really, really quickly, and there's really no turning back. You're kind of up a creek, if you know what I mean, at that point. Alright, so for the rest of my lower lash line, I'm just going back in with that first shade that we use, which is called Soft Spot, and I'm just kind of fluffing it right along my lower lash line. I like to do the lightest shade last because it kind of ties everything together and gives you a chance to kind of blend everything. If you have like harsh lines or you got a little too heavy-handed, it's the best way that I have found works for me. All right, for all over the lid, we're gonna go into this shade right here, which is called Taupe. This is my favorite new shimmer in this palette. I'm so excited about this one. So I've already gone ahead and primed my eye with my NYX glitter primer per usual, and I'm gonna go ahead and pick that shade up with my BK Beauty 203 brush. I am going to spray it with some MAC Fix Plus just so I can minimize fallout and make sure that it has a little bit more extra stick power, and it kind of amps up the shine. And I'm just gonna kind of press this all over my lid. I'm gonna bring it over to that matte shade, and I'm gonna try and blend it the best that I can. If I need to go in with a darker shimmer, I absolutely can, but I think that's blending together really nicely. Oh my gosh, this shade is absolutely beautiful. It is so reflective, so smooth. I do feel like I'm getting a little bit of fallout, but it doesn't feel significant, like I'm getting big chunks. I just felt like a little bit kind of hit my face. So I would recommend going in with your finger if that's going to be a big deal for you. That will usually minimize all fallout, or at least as much as absolute possible. But it doesn't really bother me most of the time, as long as it's not a whole lot. But that is such a beautiful shade. All right, to finish up this look, we're gonna go into the shade Emotions down here, and I'm gonna put that one in my inner corner. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up with a Morphe M421 brush. I usually do something a little bit smaller if I want a really precise inner corner. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up with my brush, spray it once again, and I'm just gonna pop it right in that very inner corner. And then once I have that shade down, I'm gonna make sure that it's kind of blended up onto the lid and blended over onto the lower lash line, just so it's not like a glob of shimmer right on the inner corner. I like to have it kind of fade into everything else. All right, y'all, so this is the first completed look with this palette, and I think it turned out really, really pretty. I'm loving that sort of smoky, grungy purple look that we have going on, and that taupe shade all over the lid is so incredibly beautiful. Again, I still think that's my favorite new improved shimmer shade in the entire palette. But let's go over what I used to finish up this look. We'll turn down the lights, do a close-up with a mirror, and then we will move on to our second look. So in my lower waterline, I went in with a Martine Cosmetics liner. This is in the shade Anthracite. I can never remember that name to save my life. But then I lined my lid with my ZC liquid liner, and then I finished everything off with my Lancome Idole waterproof mascara. All right, y'all, so for the second look, I think I want to play with some of these greens and these neutral brown shades in here, and I definitely want to put this somewhere, maybe on the inner corner. I haven't quite decided yet, but I'm going to go ahead and start with this shade right here, which is called Sage. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one up with my Morphe M504 brush, and I'm going to start by kind of fluffing this into my crease. So I'm going to do kind of the same technique that I did in the first eye look, just with different shades. So I'm just going to kind of fluff this in here, building up a little bit of depth, the pigmentation that I want, and start to bring that shape to the eye. That is absolutely beautiful. It's got good pigmentation to it. I'm not getting any patching, skipping, fallout. So far, all the mattes in here are performing exactly how I expect them to from the brand, and I'm really loving that shade. I think it's beautiful. All right, so next I'm gonna go into one of our new shades right here. This one is called Believer, and I'm gonna pick that up with a BK Beauty 206 brush, and I'm gonna build up my outer corner. So I'm just gonna go in a little light-handed. I'm gonna start to kind of tap and press it right out here where I want it. And then once I have that shade down, just like I did in the first look, I can go in and start to kind of blend and fluff and disperse it just a little bit more out here and create a little bit of a wing shape. Now, I don't think I'm gonna go along the edge and sort of soften it, just because this one isn't nearly as deep as that last shade that I used over here. I say that last shade, the purple shade that I used over here, and I think it's kind of blending out and fading very nicely. So for the lower lash line, I think I want to do more of these neutral brown shades over here, and then we're going to do this one on the inner corner. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this shade up here. This is another one of our new shades. This one is called Curious. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one up with... Where's the brush that I want? Here it is, this one right here. This is a BK Beauty 211 brush, and I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of fluff this along about half of my lower lash line. So I'm not gonna bring it all the way across. I'm gonna kind of line it up with that green shade that I have going on my lid, and then I'm just gonna kind of blend it in out here, just kind of marrying into that kind of wing shape that I have going on. All right, to deepen up my outer corner, I'm gonna go back into the shade Smoke, which is the same shade that I used on my outer corner in the first look. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up with my Morphe M506 brush, the same one that I used for the first look, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing. So I'm just gonna deepen up the very outer portion of my lid and my lower lash line, just kind of smoking it and giving that added depth that I love to have in my looks. For the rest of my lower lash line, I'm going to go into this first shade right here, which is called Day Job. I'm going to pick it up with my same BK Beauty 211 brush. I just wiped it off really well. And again, just like I did in the first look, I'm going to swipe this along my lower lash line, kind of blending everything together, blowing it out a little bit, getting rid of any harsh lines, and making sure that we just have a nice, safe, soft transition from one shade to another. For the inner corner, we're gonna go into this really pretty kind of like pukey yellow shade, which is called Exercise. And I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up with my BK Beauty 207 brush, and I am just gonna kind of pop this right here in my very inner corner, and I am gonna kind of blend it down onto my lower lash line, and I'm gonna blend it up right into my crease as well, just kind of wrapping it around the very inner corner of my eye. And then I'm gonna prime my eye with my NYX glitter primer, and we're gonna put a shimmer all over the lid. All right, y'all, so for all over the lid on this look, we're gonna go into this shade up here, which is called Topaz. It's this really pretty multi-chrome shade. It's another one of our remastered shimmer shades. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up with my BK Beauty 203 brush. Again, spray it with my MAC Fix Plus, and I'm gonna put this all over my lid. So again, I'm gonna start by pressing this on the lid, and then I'm just gonna kind of work it around my lid, and once I have that shade down, I can go in with back and forth motions and kind of soften those edges, make sure that everything blends nicely and that we don't have any harsh lines. And I think I'm gonna have to go in with another shade for this one, just so we can kind of blend everything out here a little bit more. I don't like a harsh line on my looks. I'm not a fan of cut creases and things like that. I like everything to be very unison, everything be very uniform and just blended, and just kind of transition smoothly from one shade to another. So I think for that, we're gonna go in with this one right here. It's this really pretty kind of forest green shade called Charisma, and I think this is this one of the new shades, or is this a remastered shade? Let me see really quick. This is one of the new shades, so this is a new shimmer in this palette. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe my brush off really good, and then I'm gonna pick up that shade called Charisma on the same brush, spray it once again, and I'm just gonna pop it right here where that matte and that shimmer shade meets, just to kind of blend everything together so it's not quite as harsh of a blend. Obviously you're not gonna have like a perfect blend, but you see how it just kind of fades a little bit better and a little bit softer, and then you can flip your brush over to the clean side and just kind of keep working it and blending everything together. Alright y'all, so this is the second completed look with this palette, and I think this one turned out absolutely beautiful. It is by far my favorite of the two looks that I created today, which is a little strange for me since I am a sucker for a purple, but I tell you what, that shade Exercise on the inner corner and Topaz all over the lid are so incredibly beautiful, and I just can't deny how much I love them. But let's go over what I used to finish off this look so we can turn the lights down once again, see that shimmer, shift, and sparkle, and then we can chat about this palette. So in my lower waterline, I went in with an Appeal Gel Liner in the shade Forest Green. I lined my lid once again with my ZC Liquid Liner and finished everything off with my Lancome Idole Waterproof Mascara. Alright y'all, so let's go ahead and chat about this palette and whether or not I think it is worth the upgrade from the original palette. First of all, the formula in here is incredible. It's exactly what I have come to know and love from Unearthly. It is their new matte formula, which is very creamy, pigmented, very easy to blend out, very easy to blend into other shades and build up on one another. I didn't get any patching, skipping, fallout, or anything like that. And the shimmers in here, as always, are absolutely beautiful. They are so reflective, sparkly, smooth. They're not emphasizing texture on my lid. I did get a tiny bit of fallout with the taupe shade over here on this eye, but I didn't experience it with the Topaz shade when I went in on this eye. So I think if you go in a little bit light-handed, maybe use your finger or really kind of spray your brush to kind of minimize that, it will absolutely help. But as far as the expansion in here goes, I do think they chose really good choices, but I don't know if it was absolutely necessary. We did get 3 new matte shades and 3 new shimmers in this palette, and I think for me, I appreciate the added shimmers more than I do the matte shades. I do really love this green shade right here, and I like this one more than I like this one, which is in the original palette, but honestly I could have done without it and I would have been fine. So for me personally, I could have kept the same color story and just updated the shimmers and the matte formula and called it a day. But like I said, I do like that they gave us more shimmer options, because the first palette you're tied down to 4, and it kind of limits the looks that you can do, because from there you get 8 matte shades. I do love a more matte heavy palette, but I feel like the ratio of shimmer to matte in the original is just a little too off for me. But with all of that being said, if you have the original palette and you're here for the color story and you don't need the super shifty, sparkly shades and you like what you have in here, I don't necessarily think that you need to spend the $62 for essentially the same color story with shimmers that you probably have elsewhere in your collection. Now, if you never got your hands on the original, you would absolutely love this one. It's a beautiful color story. The quality is impeccable in here. The shimmers are beautiful, and I love it. But the third option, if you're like me and you're a makeup junkie and you just have to have both versions, then absolutely pick it up. You will not be disappointed. I will probably end up gifting the original one to a friend and just hanging on to the remastered version. But I hope that's helpful. I hope that you like the side-by-side swatches and the 2 looks that I created. But that's going to complete this video. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Let me know if you have the original, if you missed out on it and you plan on picking up the new one, or maybe you have the original and you still plan on picking up the new one. I want to know it all. Let's have that conversation. Light up that comment section, and as usual, I want to thank you all so much for watching my video and spending your time with me. It truly does mean so much to me. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up before you leave. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click on that notification bell so that you can be notified of all my future posts here on my channel. I do post quite a few videos every single week, and I wouldn't want you to miss one. Until my next video, have a good one. Bye.